Before we begin today's tale of humans defying the galaxy's oldest fears, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment on what you'd do if faced with the universe's deadliest predator, and of course subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this wild journey. Your support keeps these stories alive and growing, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happens next. The council chamber thrummed with a nervous energy that no amount of ceremonial pomp could conceal. Delegates from 37 species filled the tiers of silver and crystal balconies, their voices low and sharp, whispers laced with fear. At the center of it all, beneath the towering stained-glass dome that depicted the triumphs and tragedies of 1,000 civilizations, a single word hung heavy over the assembly: the Maw. For centuries it had existed only as myth, a shadow cast across the stars, a story parents told their children to keep them from straying into the unknown. Ancient records described it as a living cataclysm, a predator that had devoured entire fleets, shattered empires, and vanished without explanation. No species had conquered it, no technology had confined it. The Maw was not just an apex predator, it was the scale against which all other dangers were measured. Now it had returned. Councillor Varith of the Very Dominion pressed his clawed hands against the carved stone railing, his translucent eyes flickering with unease. "The reports cannot be true," he rasped, his voice amplified by the chamber's translators. "A colony survives where the Maw has been sighted. This is impossible." Across from him, the human delegation remained calm, an island of composure in a sea of panic. Captain Rin Malvek stood tall, broad-shouldered in the deep blue uniform of Earth's stellar service. His dark hair was cut to regulation, his expression stern yet betraying the faintest trace of wry amusement, as though watching a storm that had not yet touched him. He did not fidget, did not whisper to his aides, did not tremble like so many others. "Impossible," Varith repeated, his voice rising, "unless these humans meddled with forces beyond reason. The Maw is not a beast to be bargained with. It is extinction incarnate." Rin folded his hands behind his back. His voice carried without strain, the steady tone of a soldier used to command. "And yet the colony endures. The people live. The predator you speak of does not roam free, counselor. It has a guardian." Gasps broke across the chamber, hisses and shrieks of disbelief in dozens of tongues. Varith bared his teeth, a snarl in place of words. "Guardian? Do you mock us? Who could tame such a thing?" Rin's eyes glinted as he answered. "A man named Elias Cade." The name meant nothing to the assembly, but the gravity in Rin's voice silenced the room. With a subtle motion, he called upon the chamber's projection systems. Light bled into the air, weaving into a living image. The delegates leaned forward, some in fascination, others in dread. On a desolate plain beneath twin suns, a human figure stood. Elias Cade, tall, broad-shouldered, weathered by years of frontier life. His clothes were simple, the garb of a settler, not a soldier. Dust clung to his boots, and his sunburned skin bore the resilience of a man who labored with his hands. He looked nothing like a hero from the myths. And yet beside him, dwarfing him, was the nightmare every species had hoped to forget: the Maw. Its body was a fortress of muscle and scale, its silhouette alone enough to quicken the heart. Rows of jagged spines ran the length of its back, and eyes like molten gold burned with a predator's hunger. Its jaws, wide enough to crush a shuttle, parted in a low growl that vibrated through the chamber's speakers. But it did not strike. Instead, it lowered its massive head to the ground, and Elias Cade's hand pressed against its muzzle. His fingers moved in slow strokes across scales that shimmered like obsidian glass. The creature's growl softened, a rumble not of anger but of contentment, like distant thunder rolling over a calm sea. The chamber erupted. Shouts of outrage. Screams of denial. A dozen voices called for the feed to be shut down, for the human delegation to be censured. Varith's claws scraped the stone railing, his voice sharp with panic. "This is trickery. An illusion." Rin raised a hand and the uproar subsided by degrees. His gaze swept the chamber, measuring each face. "You see the truth with your own eyes. The predator you fear, the beast you named untamable, stands by a human's side. Not as a weapon. Not as a prisoner. As an ally." The word hung in the air like a challenge. An elder of the Ilari, her crystalline wings shivering with unease, leaned forward. "No creature like this chooses companionship. It kills. It consumes. If it does not destroy that man, then there is something darker at work." Rin's jaw tightened. Or perhaps the flaw lies in assumption. You looked at the Maw and saw only terror. Elias Cade looked and saw something else. And it responded. The delegates shifted, their fear mingled now with a grudging fascination. Vareth spat words like venom. What you call response I call deception. Do you not understand, human? If this thing can be bent, then you are its conspirators. And if not, then it is worse still, for it has chosen your kind above all others. Either way, humanity is guilty. Rin did not flinch. If humanity is guilty of survival, then we stand guilty without shame. The murmurs swelled, waves breaking against the fragile order of the council. Some demanded eradication, others demanded answers, but no one dared deny what they had seen. The Maw, the galaxy's dread legend, had not torn the man apart. It had lain at his side like a loyal hound. The projection shimmered, fading, but the image lingered in every mind. Elias Cade's steady hand, the beast's quiet submission. A bond that should not exist. Varetha's voice, ragged and low, carried across the chamber. This cannot be allowed. The balance of the stars will shatter. If such a creature stands with humanity, then all our empires will tremble. Rin's gaze hardened. Then perhaps it is time they did. The chamber fell into silence, every delegate weighing the meaning of his words. Outside, the stars burned indifferent, but inside, the future of the galaxy had shifted. And somewhere on a frontier world, Elias Cade sat with the beast that had once ruled the galaxy, unaware that his quiet companionship had just shaken the order of the stars. The chamber lights dimmed as the human representative gave the signal, and once more the vast holoscreens flared to life. This time the council was not shown a simple image but a testimony recorded from Elias Cade himself, his voice low and deliberate, each word carrying the weight of lived experience. "My name is Elias," he began, his gaze steady as though speaking not to the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but to anyone willing to listen. "I was born on Valoris Reach, a frontier world on the rim. My people didn't have fleets or armies or fortified walls. We had soil, storms, and the strength of our hands. We grew what we could. We survived because no one else cared to take what we had. Until the Maw came." The image shifted. Now the delegates saw the world of Valoris Reach, windswept plains, jagged ridges, and a sky forever torn by streaks of lightning. A place of endurance, where every harvest was wrestled from the earth with sweat and determination. Elias stood at the heart of it, a figure hardened by necessity, the lean strength of a man who had worked fields rather than carried titles. He continued, his voice level. "The first we knew of it was silence. The night birds stopped calling. The plains were empty. Our livestock vanished, then our hunters. We thought it was raiders. But when the storm cleared, we saw it. The projection darkened. A silhouette filled the screen, vast and monstrous, moving with a grace that belied its size. Golden eyes burning in the gloom. The Maw. It tore through our outposts," Elias said, his tone neither fearful nor boastful but steady with memory. "Nothing stopped it. Plasma fire only scarred it. We had one ship in orbit, a freighter outfitted with old railguns. They opened fire from the stratosphere. It struck the beast, wounded it, but did not kill it. And then it came for the settlement itself." The counselors leaned forward, unwilling yet compelled. Elias's voice softened. "I should have run like the rest. But I didn't. I stood in the open while the others fled. I don't know why. Maybe because I had nothing left to lose. Maybe because something in its eyes told me it wasn't only rage I was seeing. It was pain." The projection replayed the moment. The Maw, staggering from the freighter's barrage, its scales split and bleeding molten light, dragging itself toward the settlement like a storm-given flesh. And in its path, Elias. A lone figure in the dust, unarmed, unmoving. "I thought it would kill me," Elias admitted. "But it stopped. It studied me. And when it fell at my feet." The council chamber rang with disbelieving whispers. Vareth hissed, "A beast does not collapse in mercy. It collapses to strike." But Elias pressed on. It was dying. Burned, bleeding, broken. I could have ended it there with a blade or a charge pack. But instead I bound its wounds. I brought it water. I dragged meat from our stores and laid it before it. And I waited. Images flickered. Elias carrying buckets of water, tearing fabric into strips, pressing cloth against rents in armor-thick scales that steamed with heat. The beast could have ended him with a twitch, yet it did not. It watched, unblinking as he worked. "The first night I didn't sleep," Elias said. "I sat with it under the storm. Every breath it took rattled the earth. I thought if I closed my eyes I'd never wake. But dawn came and I was alive. And it was still there." The delegates shifted, some uneasy, some incredulous. "The second day it rose," Elias continued. "Its shadow swallowed me whole. I thought my life was over. but it turned its head. And it followed me instead. The scene unfolded, Elias walking through fields of dust, the creature limping behind, slow, deliberate, its golden eyes never leaving him. I didn't tame it, Elias said. I gave it what it needed. And it chose not to kill me. The council erupted again, half in disbelief, half in fear. An elder of the crystalline Ilari fluttered her wings nervously. No predator chooses companionship. It chooses utility. You were food in waiting. Elias's eyes narrowed in the projection, his voice sharpening. If I was food, it had every chance. Yet here I stand. The chamber hushed. Elias drew a slow breath. Days turned to weeks. I learned its patterns. I learned its sounds. The way its growl changed when it was hungry or restless or, strangest of all, content. It never spoke, but it listened. When I raised my hand, it stopped. When I moved, it followed. I built shelter, and it curled against the walls as though guarding it. At night, it rested near me. Its breathing was the only sound I trusted. The projection showed nights beneath alien skies, a man and a beast sharing the firelight. The maw, coiled like a mountain, come to rest, its spines glowing faintly in the dark, while Elias leaned against its side, exhausted but alive. I came to see it not as the maw, Elias said, but as something else. A creature burdened by the legends you placed upon it. You saw a monster. I saw a being that wanted, as all of us do, to endure. Maybe it found in me the same thing I found in it, something willing to understand, not just fear. A long silence filled the chamber. Even Varith, always venomous, found no words. Captain Rin's voice finally cut the stillness. You've heard his account. You've seen the records. This is no fabrication. The maw is alive. And it stands beside Elias Cade, not in chains but by choice. Varith slammed a claw against the railing. By choice? Do you understand what you suggest? That the galaxy's deadliest predator, the nightmare of our species, has aligned itself with humanity? That is not reassurance, it is a greater terror than before. Elias's image looked directly into the projection lens. His voice was calm, firm. You call it terror because you only understand dominance. I'm not its master. It is not my pet. We are bound by something older than your councils and your empires. Survival. Trust. That is what you fear, isn't it? That it chose me freely. The words reverberated through the hall, heavier than any threat. The projection ended, leaving the chamber cloaked in silence. For a long moment, none moved. Then the murmur began again, voices rising in arguments and accusations. Some demanded Elias be seized, that the creature be destroyed before it upset the balance of power. Others whispered of opportunity, of secrets humanity might unlock. A few, the oldest and wisest, said nothing at all, their silence more unnerving than words. Captain Rin's gaze swept the assembly. His tone was even yet edged with steel. You saw it bow its head. You saw it walk beside him. If your fear blinds you to what that means, then perhaps humanity alone deserves to know. The council was in uproar once more, but beneath the din a truth had taken root. The impossible bond was no trick, no illusion. Elias Cade had lived where others had perished, and the beast that once ruled the galaxy had chosen not to devour him. It had chosen to stand at his side. And though the chamber seethed with fear and fury, every delegate knew the same thought, whispered in the recess of their minds. If the maw had chosen humanity, then what else might humanity achieve? The question lingered like a shadow over them all, demanding an answer that none were ready to give. The chamber air was thick with tension, heavy as though the walls themselves strained to contain the dread that rippled across the gathered counselors. No one wanted to be the first to admit it, yet every delegate knew the truth. Elias Cade's testimony had shaken the foundations of their understanding. A predator that had ruled the stars was alive, and it had not chosen destruction. It had chosen a human. Counselor Varith's claws clicked against the marble dais as he rose. His pale face glistened in the chamber lights, his voice cold and sharp. This cannot be dismissed as chance. A creature of such magnitude does not bend its will to companionship. It bends for nothing. If it stands beside humanity, it is because humanity has unleashed a weapon disguised as loyalty. He gestured toward Rin Malvek with a curl of his claw. This is not survival. It is manipulation. Admit it. You have bound it with hidden chains, or altered it with abominable science. Rin's gaze was steady, unyielding. His posture remained military, shoulders squared and hands clasped behind his back. If humanity had the means to enslave such a creature, don't you think you would already know? You fear what you cannot explain. That is not proof. That is panic. A dozen species erupted at once, voices hissing, growling, shrieking in overlapping chaos. Some called for immediate eradication, others demanded scientific examination, and a few demanded that Elias himself be detained as a danger to the galaxy. Through the storm of voices, Elias's projection remained on the chamber screens, silent but present. His face was unreadable, worn by years of hardship, eyes calm in a way that unsettled those who stared too long. He looked nothing like the monster slayer the galaxy might have expected. And that, perhaps, was what frightened them most. When the din quieted, an elder of the Korathi spoke, her voice low and resonant, like stones grinding together. Perhaps the beast has not been enslaved. Perhaps it has chosen. If that is true, then the question before us is not how, but why. The words cut through the noise, forcing silence. Counselors turned to one another with wary glances. No one wanted to say it aloud, but the implication was inescapable. Of all the species that had risen and fallen, of all the civilizations that had trembled before the Maw, it had chosen humanity. Rin looked across the chamber, his eyes catching the faintest flicker of unease in every delegate's face. He knew what they feared. Not just the predator, but what its choice revealed about humans themselves. When the council adjourned to private chambers, Elias was summoned in person. His arrival was quiet, without ceremony. He wore no finery, no armor, only the plain clothes of a frontier man who had walked long miles through dust and storm. Rin accompanied him, a silent guardian. Together they walked the marble corridors beneath the council's towering dome, shadows stretching long beneath the vaulted ceilings. Inside the chamber, dozens of eyes fixed on Elias with a mix of suspicion and awe. Veritha's lip curled in disdain. So this is the one who claims friendship with Apocalypse. A farmer dressed as a savior. Elias met his gaze without flinching. I never claimed to be a savior. I claimed to have survived. The words landed like stones in water, rippling outward. Rin gave him the faintest nod, acknowledging the sharpness beneath Elias's simplicity. The council began its questioning, their voices weaving a net of accusation. How did he first meet the creature? What did he feed it? Did he use hidden technology? Did humanity teach him secret methods? Elias answered with the same calm consistency. He told them of wounds bound, of nights spent under storms, of moments where death hovered but did not strike. He told them of trust given and returned. Nothing more. Nothing less. Some scoffed. Some whispered of deception. But others listened, and the unease in their eyes deepened. Verith pressed harder, his voice rising. You expect us to believe that kindness alone subdued the Maw? That centuries of terror ended because one human offered water and meat? Elias's eyes narrowed, his voice low. Not subdued. Respected. You don't understand the difference because you never tried. The council chamber bristled with outrage, but before the storm could break, a low vibration trembled through the floor. The marble tiles quivered and the lights dimmed. A sound rolled across the chamber, deep and primal, shaking the air itself. The Maw had come. Through the towering gates of the council hall, the creature entered, each step a thunderclap. Its spines brushed the vaulted ceilings, its molten eyes surveying the assembly with unblinking menace. Delegates shrank back into their seats, their voices stilled by instinctive terror. For the first time in living memory, the beast stood within the very heart of civilization, and no fleet or fortress shielded them. Elias alone did not move. He stepped forward, calm, steady, until he stood at the creature's side. His hand rose, pressing against its scaled muzzle as he had done before. The Maw lowered its head, the growl fading into a low rumble of recognition. The chamber froze in silence, 1,000 eyes wide with disbelief. Then chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward, weapons drawn, panic overriding protocol. Some delegates screamed for the beast to be destroyed, others for Elias to be seized. But before any order could be given, a shadow moved. A cloaked figure among the gallery raised a weapon, sleek and lethal, aimed not at the beast but at Elias himself. The glint of energy charge shimmered at the barrel's core. The shot never came. In a blur of motion that defied its size, the Maw lunged. Its massive forelimbs swept across the chamber, smashing marble as it interposed itself between Elias and the assassin. The air crackled as the energy bolt struck the creature's scales and dissipated harmlessly. With a roar that rattled the dome, the Maw's golden eyes locked on the would-be killer, who froze in terror before being dragged away by guards. The council sat in stunned silence. The beast had not reacted to threat against itself. It had moved to shield the human. Elias placed a hand against the Maw's chest, steadying it, his voice calm though his heart thundered. Easy. I'm safe. The creature stilled, its massive frame vibrating with restrained fury, then lowered itself once more beside him like a mountain settling back to rest. Every counselor knew what they had just witnessed. This was no accident. No illusion. No trick of circumstance. The galaxy's greatest predator had acted not out of instinct, not out of hunger, but out of loyalty. Rin broke the silence, his voice cutting through the awe like a blade. You see it now. It is not bound. It is not enslaved. It chose to protect him. Ask yourselves why. The chamber remained still, fear and wonder clashing in every delegate's heart. The old certainties had shattered, and nothing could rebuild them. Elias met the eyes of the assembly, his expression firm but unyielding. You fear what it means that it stands with me. But I tell you this, the fear you carry is not of the beast. It is of what humanity represents to it and to you. If even the maw can choose us, what excuse do the rest of you have? The words fell heavy, impossible to dismiss. The maw's rumble echoed once more low and steady, filling the chamber like distant thunder. Every delegate knew the session could not continue as it had before. The predator had made its choice clear, and the galaxy would never be the same. And as the council adjourned in silence, each species retreating to its private fears and calculations, the image of Elias standing calm beneath the shadow of the beast lingered in their minds. The predator had chosen. And so had humanity. The chamber of the High Council had never been so tense. Seated upon their tiered thrones, representatives of 100 species leaned forward, their antennae quivering, mandibles clicking, tails curling in agitation. They had convened in panic, summoned by the same impossible truth. The apex predator, the creature that had ruled the darkest corners of the galaxy since before most civilizations could crawl from their oceans, had not been destroyed, not even contained. It had been seen with a human. Taming. Irinder's image flared across the hollow sphere, his crimson eyes narrowed and voice sharp. The creature's leathery silhouette loomed beside him, its maw lined with teeth that had shredded battle cruisers, its wings folded like a storm contained in flesh. Yet it was not attacking. It was sitting, quiet, its gaze locked on a single human, Draven. A man without military rank, without crown, without any recognized power. And yet the beast responded to him as if he were master and kin combined. The counselors erupted in disbelief. It cannot be true, hissed the ZRR delegate, her scaled throat swelling with indignation. That monster recognizes nothing but blood and terror. To suggest a human commands it is blasphemy against the natural order. And yet, Irinder countered, his gaze cutting through the chamber like a blade, what we see is undeniable. Humans have achieved what no empire dared attempt. They have touched the untouchable. Draven, seated in the center of that storm, felt the weight of every gaze pressing upon him. He had never sought to stand in these halls, nor to hold such attention. His life had been marked by survival, exploration, and an innate curiosity that often led him into danger. And yet somehow, his choices had delivered him here, with Kale, the apex predator, watching him like a guardian shadow. It was not obedience alone that unsettled the council. It was the bond. When Draven moved, Kale's head turned. When Draven spoke, Kale's chest rumbled in resonance. It was not the dominance of master over beast, nor the leash of slave to captor. It was something older, deeper, a trust unbroken by fear. The Androlians murmured, their crystalline bodies vibrating in discord. If such a bond exists, what prevents the humans from unleashing this creature against all who oppose them? What defense could remain? Draven heard the words, felt the venom, but remained silent. He could not answer, not yet. He knew only fragments of what tied Kale to him, a history carved in blood and fire when their paths crossed on that forsaken moon. He had offered no leash, no chains, only presence, unflinching in the face of annihilation. The council turned on him at once, demanding explanations, treaties, assurances. Some called for immediate censure of humanity, others for war before this alliance could grow into conquest. Irinder stood against the tide, not as defender of humanity but as witness. His voice, though steady, carried unease. What we fear may already be past. The predator has chosen. The question is not whether humanity controls it, but why it allows itself to be with them at all. Kale stirred then, muscles rippling under scales that shimmered like darkened steel. The chamber silenced as its massive head lowered, eyes locking onto Draven. There was no malice in its gaze, no hunger. Only a clarity that unsettled the universe's most powerful minds. Draven laid a hand against the beast's snout, a gesture both intimate and dangerous. The creature rumbled low, a sound that resonated like thunder trapped in stone, and yet it was not a warning. It was acknowledgement. In that moment an unspoken truth passed between them, something beyond language, beyond logic. The council saw it, and the fear it ignited spread faster than wildfire. The Vorix ambassador rose, his chitinous limbs trembling. This aberration must be destroyed. If not the creature, then the human. End it before balance collapses. His words struck the chamber with venom, and others echoed him, voices calling for blood, for extermination. But not all joined the chorus. A few, quieter, whispered instead of possibilities. What if the predator's allegiance could be guided, not feared? What if humans, with their reckless boldness and strange capacity for empathy, had discovered a key none had dared approach? Draven remained still, every muscle taut. He could feel the razor-thin line beneath his feet. If he faltered, humanity would be branded as conspirators in cosmic terror. If he spoke too boldly, they would be seen as challengers to the order of the stars. His only anchor was Kale, whose steady presence seemed to radiate a silent warning to all who contemplated violence. The debate raged until the council chamber itself seemed to quake with argument. Words of fear clashed with visions of hope. Threats were exchanged, treaties proposed, alliances fractured. Yet beneath it all, a single realization took root like poison in the heart of every delegate. The predator could not be ignored, nor could the human who had earned its loyalty. By the time the chamber fell into uneasy silence, Draven understood something the council did not. The creature had not been tamed, it had chosen. Not by force nor by trickery, but by recognition of something it found only in him. And if Kale had chosen once, it could choose again. As the meeting adjourned, shadows lengthened in the chamber. No verdict had been reached, no consensus formed. The counselors departed with unease burning in their minds, knowing the balance of the galaxy had shifted in ways none could yet measure. Irinder lingered, his gaze fixed on Draven with something between suspicion and reluctant respect. You may think yourself fortunate, human. But fortune is a blade with two edges. That creature is no pet. And the galaxy will not forgive you if you wield it unwisely. Draven met his eyes, steady and unafraid. I never asked for forgiveness, he said quietly. Only for truth. Kale moved then, wings stretching wide as if to blot out the chamber's light, a living shadow that cast fear and awe alike. And with that display the message was clear. The age of silence around the predator was over. The council could no longer claim dominance, no longer declare mastery over the unknown. Humanity had been chosen, and the consequences of that choice would ripple through the stars. The chamber's echoes lingered long after they departed, whispers of war, of opportunity, of terror. In those echoes was the birth of something new, though none yet dared to name it. And as Draven and Kale walked from the council hall into the uncharted night, the galaxy watched, waiting for the first strike of a future no one could control. The council chamber vibrated with the sound of silence. Not the quiet of disinterest, but the charged pause of beings from 100 worlds, each unwilling to be the first to speak after what they had just witnessed. Holographic projections still hovered above the center dais. The creature that had once ruled the galaxy, the predator from myth and memory, stood calmly with its eyes closed, its massive head bowed not in submission to any alien empire, but to a human's touch. The human. Elias. His hand rested against the beast's scaled muzzle, his lips moving with soft words that none of the translation devices could capture, yet every observer could feel their meaning. Bond. Trust. Belonging. For so long the council had lived in fear of the Arkwrath, the world reaver, the perfect predator, the unstoppable force that had hunted across star systems before the council was even born. Armies had failed. Traps had failed. Entire civilizations had fallen trying to cage it. And now, before their very eyes, a single human man had done what no empire could. He had tamed it. Or perhaps something more. Draven broke the silence first. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of a revelation too heavy to contain. They won't believe this, he said, not to the council but to Elias. Even with the recording, no one will believe it unless they see it themselves. Elias kept his gaze on the beast, his fingers brushing over the scarred ridge of its snout. They don't have to believe, he murmured. They only have to understand. This isn't about control. It's about connection. About choosing trust over fear. One of the counselors, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like breaking glass, finally spoke up. Do you mean to tell us that this thing, the slayer of fleets, the terror that swallowed whole colonies, has chosen you? Elias turned then, his eyes locking on the counselor with a quiet intensity that silenced even the most skeptical. Not me, he said. Humanity. It chose to trust me, but it did so because of what I represent. We don't see a monster, we see a soul worth reaching. The council chamber erupted in discordant noise, shouts, protests, even fear-stricken cries. The idea was unbearable to many. That the apex predator, the one force that no empire could subjugate, had now aligned itself not with the council, not with any of their fleets, but with the youngest and most reckless species among them. Draven felt the tremor of the storm building in the chamber and stepped forward. "You all fear what this means," he said, raising his voice above the din, "and you should. Because the balance you've clung to, the balance of fleets and treaties and weapons, is gone. This creature, this legend has cast its lot. And it has chosen humanity." The murmurs deepened into a low, resonant hum. Some of the counselors leaned forward in awe, others shrank back in terror. They all knew the implications. Whichever species the predator stood beside would hold undeniable supremacy over the galaxy. And now it stood with humans. The Arkwrath stirred then, lifting its colossal head, eyes like molten gold sweeping across the chamber. It let out a rumble, not the roar that had toppled cities, but something lower, something softer, almost a growl of warning. And when Elias rested his hand once more against its hide, the sound cut off instantly. The chamber froze. The message was clear. The predator did not bow to the council. It bowed only to him. "You wanted to cage it," Elias said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "You wanted to kill it or bend it or break it. That's what every empire tried. And you all failed. But humanity didn't come to this galaxy to dominate it with fear. We came to live, to learn, to fight only when we must. That's what this creature saw. That's why it stays." A heavy stillness followed his words, then a slow, rising wave of realization. Some counselors' faces twisted in resistance. Others looked almost reverent. And for the first time in centuries, the predator itself seemed at peace. Draven glanced at Elias, then at the beast, then back at the council. "You all have a choice now," he said, his tone as sharp as steel. "You can resist this truth. You can try to challenge it. But if you do understand what it means, you will stand against humanity and the predator that even your greatest armies could not defeat. Or," he gestured toward Elias and the Arkwrath, "you can embrace what has happened here. You can recognize that trust, not fear, has rewritten the laws of survival. And if you choose wisely, then maybe, just maybe, this galaxy has a future not ruled by terror, but by something better." The words hung there, sharp as blades, soft as prayers. And in that moment the council fractured, not into war but into silence deep enough to feel eternal. Because they all understood, what they had witnessed could not be undone. The apex predator that had once ruled the galaxy had been tamed, not by chains or weapons but by the hand of a human. Elias looked up, his hand still resting on the beast. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's the beginning." The predator's golden eyes flickered, reflecting not menace but something akin to loyalty. The chamber's lights dimmed slightly as though the galaxy itself was pausing to breathe. And in that pause the council, proud, fearful, ancient, understood their new reality. The deadliest creature in existence had chosen humanity above all others. And nothing would ever be the same again.